The same would hold true as far as Medicare, and there the problems are more exacerbated simply because you have not only demographics, but you have the cost of health care. People have talked about various scenarios and savings. It is always characterized as cuts. Some of it may be. Some of it should be adjustments in policy. One of the reasons, I've already mentioned it once today, that I voted against the Part D Medicare program is we were prohibited under federal law. I cannot believe Congress passed that and the President signed it into law, negotiating price with a pharmaceutical company. Remove that prohibition. I do not know what the savings to the program would be, but I bet when the paper negotiates with your vendor on your health policy, you negotiate. The Veterans Administration, because they're under a different program, they negotiate prescription drug prices. Anecdotally, I use my mother as an example on Medicare. When she was in assisted living at St. Anthony's, she had a fall, perfectly fine. But under the regulations, they had to call an ambulance to take my mother to the end of the building where the hospital was for whatever that ambulance charge was. Given that it was a nurse who found her, there is a wheelchair available, and they could have pushed her down the hallway. I'm saying that's not cutting anybody's benefit. That's just thinking this program through, and to be afraid to talk about changes like that is also irresponsible. On the spending side, I have been asked, and I would simply address it at this point, well, we have a rotten economy. It has been suggested we are out of the recession, but from my perspective, it is still a very, very weak and bad economy. There is no money for a great new stimulus program. The Fed has concluded their most recent action and do not appear to be injecting any new monies into the system. But I have pointed out to my colleagues one of the weaknesses of the energy and water bill is the lack of investment. We have the energy and water bill. That includes every water project in the United States of America. The backlog of core projects that are being undertaken today is $12 billion. In 2009, the American Civil Engineers Society indicated that the backlog for investment in basic sewer, roads, you get the picture, is $2.2 trillion. And my point is, one of the things to do as we have this debate is recognize you do have to make an investment. And to the extent you look at how you're spending this money, we have to put an emphasis on investment dollars. Final area is that we simply cannot do this through spending alone. And the Congressional Budget Office estimates that for the deficit reduction total of the 1993 Act of $433 billion, $241 billion were revenue, which means 56% of that package. In 1997, when Bill Clinton was president, and again, the Republicans controlled both houses of Congress, there were an additional $118 billion worth of savings. $80 billion were on the revenue side, or 68%. So you have had, at least in one instance, of both parties participate in budget reduction that was serious and put both sides of the equation on the table. You have a situation with taxes today where you had 12 companies between 2008 and 2010, including such luminaries as GE and Honeywell and IBM, pay no tax. $171 billion of profit in those 3 years with those 12 companies. They didn't pay any income tax. I think that's wrong, and that is not just in our society today. I am appalled that the President signed into law the extension of the Bush tax cuts in December of this past year. And I voted against those extensions because we borrowed every penny of that extension. And we can't keep doing that. So from my perspective, again, we have got to put both sides of the equation on the table. And for those who think, again, we can simply solve this using one half of the board or the other, I would disagree with that. When people talk about taxes, I point out those 12 corporations, but I'm not saying that it's just simply corporate tax. It is time. And one of the things that I didn't appreciate in December of this past year is when those negotiations in December were taking place, and I'm oversimplifying this, everything over $250,000 was bad, everything under $250,000 was good. Well, you have 47% of American citizens today who don't pay any income tax.
What percent?
47% of Americans don't pay any income tax. Now, I'm not saying they don't pay tax. They're paying their payroll tax, they're paying property tax, they're paying sales tax, they may be paying excise tax, all sorts of other taxes. But the way the code is going to say, they pay nothing. I'm not saying those 47% of the people are the solution. But I'm saying if we live in a society based on ability to pay, everybody ought to, except those who are destitute, you ought to pay a little something. And for those on the other end, I'm saying to those who say, well, we'll just raise the rates. Well, let's not be simple here. There's not a tax credit, deduction, or exemption. I don't believe, it may be, that at some point didn't have some value to it. Well, okay, we're at this point now. What has the least value? When Mr. Freeland-Hyson and I did our energy and water bill, it was hurtful. And we are spending less next year if things remain unchanged than we are this year on water infrastructure. Fundamentally, that can't continue either, but okay, let's start paving the way here, and somebody's got to set an example, we'll make a cut. And we tried to make some thoughtful cuts along program line. Ways and Means and Senate Finance got to do the same thing from my perspective. But don't just give me, okay, here's the income line or here's what the rate is. There's got to be some deductions, exemptions that just, they have less value today than getting this puppy balanced out. And there's a lot of posturing going on. There's no question about it. There's a lot of rhetoric. Time and deadlines hopefully focus people's attention and recognition that this can't go on. You're seeing a fair number of people from financial communities, independent groups coming in, very concerned about what series of things begin to transpire before August 2nd. This idea that nothing changes before August 2nd is also wrong. And I think as people understand, no, this isn't, and a number of my colleagues have said, well, this is just like TARP. The market went down one day and everybody was fine. Or this is like when we were going to shut down the government this spring with the appropriations process. And this isn't. And I think you're just starting to see that point driven home, that no, if you check money market funds with government instruments in them today, they're starting very imperceptibly to be a disinvestment. You're seeing today very imperceptibly foreign investors holding back and not maybe putting as much in, maybe not stopping yet. Mr. Hoyer has a financial working group. I'm in there. We met with investment bankers on Thursday. Bernanke claims he believes if something hits the wall, mortgage rates will go up 2%. These people were fairly measured and said they thought as far as borrowing costs over the life cycle of the debt, and some of that debt's very long term, you're talking about 0.6% to 1%. But you multiply that times $14 trillion and you're another $140 billion borrowing costs, not overnight, but very soon. And people have, as we get closer, and you're seeing more of those conversations take place by very serious people who, again, try and here's the numbers. People say, well, we can just sell some assets. We have over $1 trillion worth of assets. Well, okay, let's sell all of our gold. Let's sell all of our foreign currency. Let's sell all of our government-backed instrument. Let's calm down here. There are consequences, and they're long-term.